blimey. So I actually haven't been back here in this park for years and years. This little area here, actually, bringing memories back to me now, this used to be the Women's Institute hut. So there actually used to be a hut here where this play area is. At one point, eventually it got torn down. I think the building was starting to become a little bit too unusable. And it was just a very simple, basic basketball court. They tore it down to just to the floor and sort of plonked a basketball hoop over there. Didn't really get used much. It's nice to see a younger kids area here, because it was mainly just, as you can see, bigger swings. The youngest sort of thing you had was just two more braced up swings, and everything else was more for older kids. So it's nice to see they've got that there. Everything has recently been replaced with these very hard wood frames, which is good to see, because these not so much, but the frames over there with those swings were getting a little bit on the dodgy side, especially when the larger kids like myself, nothing's changed there, would get on those swings. They would actually quite often get damaged because they just weren't up to the age of the kids that were down here. The older we got, the more it was used rather than the opposite way around, I think. They still have this same vole and mole problem, I see, from all the mounds along here. But yeah, we have a lot of memories down here. Once, a friend of mine, who shall remain nameless, but Mr. Cameraman will know, it snowed quite heavily here in Veryan, and my friend came over here with his quad. I had a basic plastic sled, and he literally tied me to the back of his quad, and we went around Veryan. It was great fun until we came down here. That tree there was a lot bigger than it was now, and we were going around here like mad until we got our wires mixed, and there a little bit of slack was caught. I was going down, he turned up, but I didn't keep tight on the rope, so at one point he was accelerating up the hill as I was accelerating down the hill. Once that slack went, my goodness, if you want to see someone big like me fly, it's interesting. I went through the chains of a swing straight into that tree. It hurt a lot. Where I'm currently sitting used to be a roundabout that survived the ages here in what we call the big park. There's two parks. This is the big park, and up the road in Park Andreas is the little park. I think that's still how they're sort of recognised today. Not official, just how they're all remembered. This used to be, more where you're standing actually, a roundabout. Not one of these roundabouts with the full frame. It was just a central column with a round piece of wood. Job done. Man, it was dangerous. And it was fun. But I think it eventually gave up. It was here for what, 20, or at least 20 years of my life. We had a lot of fun on it, but it started to get a bit of a wobble. So getting on and off that thing was a little bit dangerous, but very, very fun. They've now replaced it with this, is it gazebo? Would you call it a gazebo? I'd say a gazebo. I suppose it's more family friendly. It gives everyone a space just to sit down and have a relax. I think a table would have been nice in the middle. Never know. But yeah, they've done a lot here in this park. If we move actually over to here, I can't remember if there ever was anything here, but they've got like a little climbing frame apparatus style thing for kids. I think it needs a little bit of fixing up, but it's nice to see that they've put some money and effort into this place, from all the way down the bottom with the kids' play area, all the way up to the larger kids, and also, I'll say the bigger kids. They've got some more benches here. It's made it a little bit more friendly for everyone. It was very minimalistic before, lots of older apparatus. This has actually now been here for a few years, because whenever you come into Veryan, you have to drive down this road. And I always remember watching it change, sort of what was going on. One thing, though, that hasn't really changed at all, if we go to the top in a second, I'll show you the great tube of the big park. You're going to get some echo. Oh, God! Okay, so I'm a little bigger than when I used to go running through here. Right now, I've got to be the hunchback of Notre Dame, so to speak. But this tube has been here under this pile of mud for as long as I can remember, and it's been, as simple as it is, it's been a great amount of joy for a lot of kids. And it's also what's on top of this mound that gives a lot of fun. I don't know how stable this is. One can only hope stable enough for me to get out of here. Oh, jeez. I'm a lot bigger than I was back then. So this was a a fort. It used to be a double-layered fort, from what I remember. A little wooden structure that was built for kids to play around, obviously going in the tunnel, and quite fun. It's a little run down at the moment, however, it has been utilised. There's a set of steps coming up, you've got a path. We just found out that side. I'm a bit out of breath because I climbed the sort of net climb that you get, that Alex did not tell me that there was a path for on the other side. So bear with me while I get my breath. There is also, and I'm going to regret saying this because I know you're going to want me to go down it, this kid slide that has been put in. It's quite amazing how much you can utilise a mound of dirt. Oh, it's really painful. So here we are at the church here in Veryan. It's a St Symphorian's church, which sadly I only learnt the last couple of years the name of it, because it was only ever known to me as the church. There's only one church in the village. This is it. As a child of a Church of England school, obviously we spent a fair bit of time coming over here. We did nativity scenes, the usual sort of stuff you expect. But there was also a little bit of interesting stuff where we would come over in an evening as a school, as an activity now and again, to listen or watch the bats, which you could literally see just in sort of dark twilight, flying overhead all the way down here, all the way down the path, and basically to the school, which is just the other side. Alongside that, there's a lot of historic graves here. You can see a lot of history in just the names and the years as you go around, the different types of gravestones, the different names, the people, a lot of Cornish history. And one of those graves is very interesting, and that is just up there, which we're going to go and have a look at right now. You might want to come and have a look at this. So yes, there's a lot of history here in this graveyard, as there are a lot of them. I mean, to look around this area particularly, you can tell these are very old gravestones. And yet, what you will find is a lot of the names, at least the surnames on these graves, you will find that for those families here in Veryan today and spread around. We just went past Dunstone. I know a few Dunstones. There's, I'm trying to think of examples right now. Let's have a look what we've got. Middlecote, not someone I know. But you get the sort of sense of family because you get them right next to each other. As we go further up, you'll see it starts to get a little bit more modern, but it's still a mixed bag. Until we get to about here, you got my childhood sort of graves were appearing, if that, if that makes sense. Over on the right here, we actually have my great aunt, and my granddad, who actually died as a result of the disease in the trenches in the war, and we'll talk a bit more about that later. My dad, bless him, he's over on the left hand side with the more modern graves, and then we've got the Homeyard Homes just behind, which has a couple of roundhouses, not traditional, but this is where that's actually where my gran lived after she lost her husband, my dad's dad, and that's actually where war widows, this place was built for war widows in sort of like warden housing. My gran and granddad is up here somewhere in a joint grave. When it came to the funeral, my dad up to that point had always said how he didn't care so much about not knowing his dad, he never met him properly. He was only ever held once by his dad, my granddad, just before he died from diseases in the war. However, the grave opened and my dad bawled his eyes out, bless him. And it turns out all he wanted to be able to do was see where his dad laid. But because my gran had planned to be buried alongside him, they had buried my granddad just a few foot deeper. So my dad never got to see him. But, you know, it showed a softer side to my dad. And he always taught me that from that, it doesn't matter how hard you are, you're always going to have a soft side to you. You've got to keep yourself mentally in check. I've sidetracked here. We're here to see a very long grave, which is just at the top up here. Let's go and have a look at it. So we are now at the top of this section of the graveyard. We were just down the bottom there, and it all seems pretty normal, your standard stuff, until you get to here. This is Britain's longest grave. This grave is because of an unfortunate happening at Gull Rock. The Hera got stuck, got moored and sunk. I think it was 1914. I'm going to have to check that one in a minute. 19 men died. I believe 5 survived. And the only way I can remember that, my dad who's over that way, and his group, Duhag or Sea Shanty Group, wrote a song about that very night called The Hero, which is the name of the ship. If you ever want to know information about it, that's kind of the place to start because it gets you the basics. The ship had come over from South America, had already been sailing for about 90-91 days, got caught in a storm, saw the lights of Falmouth, decided to try and dock, and unfortunately went straight into Gull Rock. And that was it, that was the end. And this is where the memorial, I don't know if the bodies are actually here or not, but this is where they are remembered. And it is still, I believe, the longest grave in Britain. So this is actually, I think, the first time I've taken such a great look at this grave for something that's the longest or the biggest in Britain. It's not exactly the most, the brightest or chirpiest of subjects, but I got to give credit to my dad, my late dad. He got the numbers right. There are 19 names on this gravestone. I believe not all the bodies were actually able to be found, obviously wrecked in the ocean. I believe they found some. 5 survived. And all their names are listed here, along with some of their job roles. And you can see as you go along down the grave, there are an amount of just basic stones, almost like bricks, but with dates of birth, and obviously 1914 being the end for them. But there was actually a day here in Veryan a few years ago dedicated to the history of the hero. The church opened up, there were photographs, there were talks, there were people who had distant relatives or friends that knew about it, and it was a very, very lovely day for the community to come together again about something in such a small village. It's really lovely to remember the history of the area, even if it is a little bit from further afield. It's just very lovely. It's humbling. It's very nice. Anyway, we're going to move on now, probably in perfect time and perfect fashion, just above us where the Homeyard Homes are. So we are now at the Homeyard Homes in Veryan, sort of a midway point on a more of a back route out and into the village, aiming more toward Portlow. I have a lot of memories here because my gran actually used to live, now first of all she used to live in this house, number 7. This was the matron's house. This whole complex, shall we call it, was a war widows retirement sort of facility built during World War II, and it was for, just like I've explained, it's for war widows to come and have a place to be safe, have a sense of community, but also with the safety of a warden, which my gran actually was at the time. She then eventually moved into the first roundhouse we see on the left and spent pretty much the rest of her life here. My dad actually grew up with her. I can't remember if it was the warden's house or the roundhouse, but he definitely spent some time in the roundhouse at some point. And I, as a child, can remember coming up here, coming through the main gates, even with our old dog, bless him, and apparently all the old ladies loved me. What can I say? But it was lovely. One of the old ones is my 80-year-old grandma would come here and play cricket with me on this lawn. She would put all her energy into it. I don't know how I didn't keel her over, but my goodness, she had some energy in her. It's very hard to beat her, I'll say that. But it's such a lovely place. It's got such a lovely, calm, quiet community. It's in Veryan, it's a part of Veryan, but it's also just disconnected enough for people to have a quiet life. I used to know a lot of people here, but obviously with the nature of the place, I no longer know really anyone here. But it's beautiful, it's got outside spaces, it's got some spaces out the back, a lovely walk around. It's got everything you would want just to have a nice quiet life with a few friends around you. And I've got, like I said, some lovely memories of coming up here and just, you feel very at peace. And it's very lovely. So we have just had a quick stop opposite the Homeyard Homes, which we were just at, to have a quick look at this entrance to Tryst House, which you may be able to see the sign just there. We've also got a sign here, just to my right, the Old Vicarage. And that's about as much as I know about the history of this place. This is more a childhood memories part. There's a family that used to live here. It's a lovely big mansion out in there with amazing gardens throughout. Absolutely beautiful. And one thing they have is a swimming pool. And they used to let all the secondary school kids, whenever we phoned up to ask. Come home from school, go home and get our swim kits, go up and have a swim for an hour or two. It was absolutely great. It was a nice way of socialising, having a bit of exercise, because I definitely need that. And there's just a lot of lovely memories. And there's also a couple of parties that were thrown here. You could really see how vast it is. From this little entrance, it doesn't do it justice. That isn't Tryst House. I believe that is what they're classing as the old vicarage area. The house itself is absolutely huge. There's even an observatory built into it. Whether that's still there nowadays, I don't know. But if you ever get the chance to come here, consider yourself special and do enjoy it. So we still got the same footpath sign that somehow stood the test of time, being wood. I'm hoping we can still get down here. There was one of those childhood sort of stories and rumours about there being a haunted house just down here. What is actually down here is a very old shack. I don't know who owns it, but it's pretty much crumbled to ruin now. You used to be able to get inside it, but there were signs to warn you it was dangerous. But nowadays it's just an absolute crumbled mess. In fact, it looks like now there's some metal grates and gates around it. It's that bad. It used to stand quite tall, where you can see right now there is only, well, there's very, very little. It looks like sawdust almost. Let's go have a little look. We're actually at the back entrance to the graveyard. We were just on that path. There's a lot of stuff in Veryan in a very small space. My goodness me, look at that. It has crumbled. You can see at the back wall how tall it once was. You know, it was a proper, almost two-storey house, but it's just overgrown and crumbling to pieces. There was an entrance here, somewhere in amongst this mess, and as kids we would dare each other to go inside because we thought it was haunted. There we go, danger, keep out. I remember that sign well. Didn't keep us out, I tell you, but you definitely need to keep out, as you can see from the state of it. Looks like we can get all the way down. This actually brings us back down to the front of the graveyard and to the school, which we were going to have a chat about. While we're on the way down, actually, we can have one last stop off at the cenotaph. Like many places, like many villages and places around the UK, there are cenotaphs, and it's actually where my granddad's name is written, but he didn't quite get put on there at the same time as everyone else. I was actually at school one day. I knew my granddad had died as a result of diseases in the trenches from the war. I knew that he was one of the people to be remembered at this cenotaph, and obviously as a school we would come over here like many schools and read the names off on, you know, excuse me, sorry, I'm falling over, on the day. But I never clocked my granddad's name wasn't on it. My family never sort of said anything. We like to remember. We don't worry about physical things so much, or, you know, names anywhere. I was once playing across in the playground, as you can see there, and a teacher came up to me and said, they're putting a name on that cenotaph. And I said, okay, you know, little me, didn't care so much about these things, typical young child at the time. And they asked me, whose name are they putting, you know, they said, do you know whose name they're putting on there? And I said, no. And they said, they're putting your granddad's name on. And that's my granddad on the bottom right there, James Malachi Trudgeon. And apparently he'd been missed off. I don't know why. And they actually, on the day, had me standing here. They have all the children standing around with a name each in their hands to read off from this cenotaph. And they'd made sure I had my granddad's name in my hand. And it took me a moment to sort of clock what was going on. I was only a little kid. But it sort of started to sink in then that someone had finally remembered my granddad for the things he'd done, like everyone else, and put him on there. And I had the pleasure and privilege to read his name out during it all. So we're here now in front of the Veryan Village Hall, the Veryan Parish Hall actually, saying that. Typical sort of village hall, gets very well used, maybe not so much this last year obviously with the pandemic, but I actually have memories of going with my gran from up at the Homeyard Homes, coming down here, and yes, I took part in the whist drive. I learnt how to play whist, don't ask me how to play it now, I've long forgotten, but there was the kind of prizes you would get are like raw meats that you can go home and cook up, which I always loved, you know, because you can tell I love me food. But it was a great fun game. You play it in pairs, and you sort of sit opposite each other, and it's just it's sort of a basic to advanced numbers game. But while the age of the people here, and especially this village, which we'll go on about in a little bit, was considerably older than your standard village. Hi there. Gotta love traffic at a perfect time, eh? Considering the average age of the village is, you would say, considerably older than where a regular village near a town or something like that. Give them their dues. I could not keep up with them. My goodness me, they knew how to play their whist. See, that's the kind of thing around here. You get that sort of community feel. Everyone's a bit smiley and wavy and happy, but they're on a road. They're still happy to slow down for a couple of fools doing a bit of filming. Sorry, Alex, didn't mean to call you a fool there. So this is actually the street and the house where I've grown up and spent most of my life, actually. I'd say coming up to just over half of my life. Roseland Gardens. It's a lovely place. As you can see behind me, it's a little bit overgrown at the moment. The house is in need of a bit of a fix-up. I'm currently fixing that, but that's not why we're here. I can remember this pavement specifically. Dangerous as it may have been, all of us as kids would come down on skateboards, not stood up, like on our bellies or on our bums, in a kind of a wacky races type thing. Yeah, looking back at it, I don't know how any of us didn't get hit by a car coming up, but then again, you can see it's quite a calm, peaceful place, lovely village sort of style to it. And up the road there is actually where Park Andreas is, and that actually just used to be a field. And I can remember it being, well, I can remember going up there with our dog, Badger, don't ask, and walking him up there, and then I can remember it being renovated, and then all the people moving in, which is basically where most of my friends sort of came in. There was a couple dotted around before, but when that estate was actually built was where I actually got most of my childhood friends from. It's a lovely place. We've seen a lot of had a lot of laughs, a lot of tragedy, and just very typical village life around here. One thing you may or may not like is how closely knit everyone is. There's not really much that goes under the radar here, which is kind of why I left eventually. It was a little bit too much for me, but some people like that closeness, and there is generally an air of everyone's got each other's back here. And even when I come back now, for all the reasons I left, I actually do like it a little bit to come back, see some familiar faces. We've already had a few people giving us a smile, a nod and a wave. But the problem is, to try and get any of these houses these days, you're going to be spending 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 because of where you are, because of how close you are actually to the beach, a 5-minute drive, 2 beaches. Whereas my mum and dad bought this house back in the day, I think we're looking at 20, 30, 40,000. And they paid it off over 25 years. With the wage back then, even as much as that was technically valued at back then, it was so much easier for younger people to buy or mortgage. And nowadays, if I wanted to get a place like this, the only way is probably the way it's going to happen, which is through inheritance. And it's a real problem. Villages like this in Veryan and also all around Cornwall is now being seen as retirement villages almost, unofficially. And it's a shame because there are so many now adults and future adults that would love to live here and, spend their lives, but there's not enough opportunities and just not enough money to buy such expensive houses. So we are now here at the Veryan Sports and Social Club, and a fair bit has actually changed since I was last here. A fair bit hasn't changed. We have a very large cricket field, football, everything, all the sports are run up here. Very well kept grounds. To my right, we've actually got the bowling green, which we will look at a little bit, but this is the actual building. It comprises of changing rooms, both this side and the far side. We have lots of equipment sheds. We've got a conservatory for watching the bowls, which we will have a look at in a minute. And further down is actually another hall. Actually got a dance floor built into it. Last I remember anyway, your typical slidey wooden floor, which a lot of children will remember from just running along and knees down, sliding along it. It was great. Then, of course, the Sports and Social Club bar the other side, which has been doing pretty well considering all the rules and regulations around coronavirus. They've got all their 2 metre distance, they've got all their social distancing up, as we can see right in front here. They've recently been renovating it, and it's a lovely place. It's it's another hub to the village. The pub down the road is one, up here is definitely another. You can't really have just one or the other. They both have a very big significance. Lots of events have been run here. My dad used to be one of the Veryan lads of his time. He used to play a lot of cricket up here. There are still pictures of him down at the pub in that team. Now, I was never like my dad. I was not a Veryan lad. And a lot of people who watch this will say the same thing. I didn't really fit in, but I have a great respect for all the people here. They all look after each other. They all love to play the sports here together. They commiserate together, they celebrate together, and they always just want to do their best. But there's always good sportsmanship with the surrounding villages, which they come here home to play with and also go away. Lots of great memories here for a lot of people. And one of the best things I found very recently, we were just obviously down at my childhood home. I'm currently sorting the house out ready for renovation, but during the sorting of it, I came across a handful of photos of this place being built. And it looks to me like this place was actually built by the village. I recognise pretty much all of the faces in the photos as my friends' parents and families and friends. And it was built by them all. They're digging up everything, either manual labour or using their own skills to build the place. And it was just lovely to see again that sense of community back then, and also to know that that kind of hasn't died as time has gone on. And that's one of the biggest parts of village life, like out in wilds like this, that I really love and respect. And it's lovely to come back to as well. So let's have a little look around a bit more. So we are here at the village bowling green. A lot of people don't exactly know bowling too well, but if you're out in one of these villages out in the wilds around Cornwall, you will definitely know what bowling is. Lots of tournaments go on between all the villages, much like with cricket and football and rugby. And this is where my dad used to play a lot of his home games. Him and his best mate would actually often be in the finals of the Champion of Champions games. And we are currently having a problem at home because he's got so many trophies that we don't know what to do with, because nearly every year it was him, and then Andy the next, and then him, and then Andy. And don't get me wrong, others did win, but they seemed to be on top of their game, and also as a pair, they were a force to be reckoned with. But it's lovely to see that such an old tradition is still being run. Obviously, with coronavirus, not so easy at the moment. The pitch is being upkept. I'm not too sure about the scarecrow that seems to have appeared in the middle. I guess that has function. But I can remember many days coming up here to watch Dad play bowls. Didn't see many other kids doing that kind of thing, but I was very proud of him, and I still very much am. Even my granddad would come up and watch. It's a very calming thing to watch on a nice sunny day. You could go into this conservatory here as well and relax. It was very warm, and just have a nice pint if you're old enough, of course. Or, you know, your dad sneaks you a cheeky one. We won't go into that. But yeah, my dad did try and get me into it. Maybe too young. Couldn't quite get a ball even halfway across the pitch, but very cool. And it might be something I still get into, because it's still something that interests me. So we're here now, actually up in the field, the main sports field of the Sports and Social Club. You can see behind me the main hall area, but also you may recognise the cricket scoring booth, which is basically an attic to the front porch. But I have lots of memories of games happening up here. Even if you're not interested in the sport at all, it was a lovely day to come up on a sunny day, sit outside with a drink. Crabbies is my favourite, I must admit, and just be a part of the day, speak to people, have a chat, have a socialise, and I don't know, it was just it's another hub, like I've said before, of the community, and it's always great fun. Lots of good competition here, lovely to have neighbouring villages come over and enjoy it too, catch up with friends. And yeah, they've done a really good job recently of trying to deal with coronavirus, because these outside benches here were not so much a thing until late, especially this lovely built fence. They've done a really good job of trying to keep going during coronavirus. Over the years, I completely forgot about this, my dad actually ran the bar here for a few of the years. And it's more of a franchise. A lot of people have tried to run it and it's not quite worked out, but currently it's looking like it's doing very well, and my hat's off to them, because it would be such a shame to see this place closed down for any reason. It's got so much history, I've got so many memories, and like I said, I've got pictures of right here, this whole place being dug up for foundations and being built by hand by the very people who live in the village still. And I couldn't imagine this place without this. It's such a lovely place, with great views as well. One thing more recent, not so much historical, as many people in these kinds of villages know, the signal on your mobile phone was absolutely terrible. If you were to sit here, even here at the top or the highest point in Veryan, you'd get nothing. But right behind us now, there is a 4G mast. There was a scheme put in place to help all these outlying villages and coastal areas that don't have signal. And now it's actually one of the best places you can go to have signal, out here in the wild, in valleys. It's great. So it's nice to see that the communities and villages like this aren't forgotten, and they're kept up to date to keep people in the know and still able to enjoy village life without sacrificing too much. So we are now on another sort of side road of Veryan, which actually takes you to Carn and Pendower Beach. But we're going to be here looking more at these two buildings. These are the roundhouses, or at least two of the roundhouses of Veryan. You actually pass a different two on the very main road coming in. Now, there's a lot of history about these, and to be honest with you, don't know too much. But one thing I do know is they were built around because back in the times they were built, it was to try and stop the spirits of people or demons from hiding in corners of buildings. And that is the reason they are around. And they've been very well upkept, as of the others around the village, because they're such a big part of Veryan's history. You ask anyone who knows of Veryan, almost immediately the roundhouses are the story to talk about. I actually have a bit of a dodgy memory here. I remember as maybe mid-teens sort of lad, I met a few friends out here in Veryan. They were having a bit of a time, having a little drink, and my memory starts to fade as we get up to this road, and we were sat here having a nice time. One of the houses around here was having a party, lots of drunk people together. Anyway, needless to say, a few weeks later, I was sadly being questioned by police about an incident on that night. Thankfully, not involving me, we will say, but a little bit embarrassing. But we've all had those moments, and you do get those moments in quiet villages like this. Kids are going to amuse themselves if there's nothing to do. I think I've said all I'm allowed to say on that one. No mentioning of names, moving on. Okay, so we're here at the New Inn pub in Veryan, and I had a few things I want to talk about, but first of all, I've just been handed this photo that I've never seen before, and it's quite incredible. It shows, actually behind you, the camera, where there's a couple of houses now, more recently built. There is actually a petrol station here, which I've very thankfully been made aware of. I never knew it was a petrol station. I only remember it being a garage, you know, a typical car garage when I was younger. But you can see how things have evolved. There used to be, in even a small village like this, such heavy services, such as a big old garage. Sadly not there anymore, but it has been replaced by some lovely houses. And obviously behind me we have the pub. Lots of memories here. A lot of my dad's time was spent here, bless him. He ran a lot of pub quizzes, was very involved in darts, as one of the Veryan lads. We've had a lot of memories. Obviously, we can't go in at the moment due to coronavirus, but just to my right, and you can see all around the benches, we have got now an outside serving point with the staff all taking their precautions. Everything's been done very well. I know the landlord very well, Colin. He is on top of everything, and I've got to give him a salute and a hat tip. He really has been keeping on top of all the regulations. He's a great pub landlord. I'm hoping sometime in the future we can have a proper chat with him, because he has got stories as long as your arm about my dad, about the people here, and just great memories. I believe this actually used to be two cottages that then got made into one to be the pub. If we could go inside, you would see a very standard, a very good-looking pub with all your typical ornaments on the walls, all with history attached to them. And you would need a day, 2 days, 3 days, an amazing amount of time just to be able to go through all the amazing stories here. This is definitely somewhere we would love to come back and have another proper look at and a proper chat with Colin. We'll see him again soon. So that is the end of our very brief look at Veryan. I must say, I can imagine there are so many stories that I have missed out, that I've forgotten, so many stories I've not even heard of, but we've only got so much time. So we're sat here now in sort of like the village square sort of area of Veryan, if you wanted to call it that. What kind of thing do you think is going to happen to a place like this in this day and age? Because, like I said before, it's very hard for people who live in this area, the younger generation, to buy houses like this. It's more going to be like myself. I'm going to get an inheritance or something like that, and I'm very lucky, and I do appreciate that. But it is a shame because more and more villages like Veryan and villages around Portlow, Probus, Tregony, they're more and more becoming like unofficial retirement villages, and it's a huge shame because while there isn't very much to do here, I think that's also a product of not having the people here to make things to do, and it's a very vicious cycle. When I was here as a younger lad, there were two very well kept parks. The one that we haven't actually seen is a little less kept now. There's a lot of paths I can remember being lovely to walk around and play around the village that are starting to overgrow, and it's just becoming more, oh, like I said, more of a retirement village. I really do hope it can come back and be more of a balanced village, because it would be such a shame for somewhere like this to go to waste. There are those who still live here now, the families I remember when I was a child, they still live here now, and they now have kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, and it's really nice that we've walked around to sort of prove me wrong in what I'm saying. I've actually seen a lot of people out today that are still here. They are still living that village life that I remember. And I'm hoping in those families, those steadfast families that stay here, they'll be able to continue that village feeling. And as the economy hopefully improves, maybe, just maybe, we'll get back to that village life that is more encompassing for all ages. And it'll just be a lovely place to be. But for now, that's us done. I hope we come back here soon. It's been lovely revisiting. Thank you very much.